Hello, welcome to week 8 lecture 5 cricket conditioning program design case 2. Now we will start this lecture by again revising the fitness training design framework that will be used to design the conditioning program for cricket. Then we will review the conditioning as a fitness variable with reference to Lawson and Bushett's HIIT framework. Then we will introduce the case study, which will become the background to design the program. Then we will get familiar with how to design a sport specific preparation conditioning periodized program. Initially, the program that was demonstrated was for general preparation. Now this would specifically mention for sport specific preparation. So let's understand what different changes that you will use to suit the sport specific preparation demands. The outcome of this lecture is you should able to create a new fitness program using the fitness training design framework. You should able to interpret the fitness test and exercise history to identify which fitness variable needs improvement. You should able to create a periodized training block and planning using loading paradigm and biomotor periodization. And you should able to design the conditioning fitness program per week. Now, what is the fitness training design framework? Now, this framework has 5 steps. So, if you want to design a program, you first start with identifying the measurable goal and the time frame within which you want to achieve. Now, in order to achieve this, what you need is to refer the demographic information of the athlete, the exercise history of the athlete, and the current fitness test of the athlete. Now, in many cases, you may not get chance to execute a fitness test. In such cases, a basic asking a question, what fitness variable you want to improve. If you could interrogate this with your athlete or the coach, even without having the fitness test base, you would able to identify which fitness variable you want to improve. Now, once you have identified the goal and the time frame, now you create a periodized training, which is nothing but creating cycles. These cycles can be of 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then you choose within that cycle which fitness variable you want to train. That is called as planning. So this is how in step number 2 and 3, you create a periodized training program. Once you have set the goal, you have selected the training blocks and what fitness variable to be trained in each block, block 1, block 2, block 3 as an example. Now, for each block, you design frequency, intensity, type, volume, which is nothing but programs. This together represents an fitness training design framework which systematically covers SMART goal principle, periodized principle, principle of overload, and principle of specificity and principle of customization. So, all the principle of training are systematically step by step applied with this framework. Now, let us again revise what is conditioning fitness variable and how it is applied with Lawson's and Bush's HIIT framework. Now, 6 types of conditioning. Each type can be trained by applying a specific type of HIIT. So, the types of HIIT are short HIIT, long HIIT, repeated sprint training and sprint interval training. So, you used this framework mapping to develop a specific conditioning type that represent developing a specific aerobic system or the combination of aerobic system. Now let's start with case 2. Now here is the demographic information. A cricketer playing at a club level and a fast bowler as the position. Now with respect to exercise history, since 8 weeks training, conditioning and aerobic capacity. Now fitness test, the current aerobic conditioning, which is represented by mass value, is 13.5 km per hour, and the current cardio capacity, which is represented by VO2 max, is around 46 ml per kg per minute. Now the next event, that is the next tournament, is approaching within 6 weeks of time. So after 6 weeks the competition starts. Now the goal is, this is what you need to set. Now let's understand the context here. In case 1, this is the exactly same case that is demonstrated in chapter number 2. Now executing the 2 months of conditioning and cardio program, the aerobic capacity and the aerobic conditioning has improved. Now the goal is to bowl greater than 5 overs at same higher intensity. Now what it demands is to maintain the high intensity, and that is represented by anaerobic capacity. This is represented by, the KPI for that is peak power. Now peak power can be measured with a run based protocol or a lab based protocol. Let's consider this is measured with a run based protocol by repeated anaerobic sprint test, and this peak power currently is around 400 watts, which represent much more, is around 350 watts, which represent much more lower, higher speed running ability. Now what we have with this athlete is a good aerobic capacity, a average aerobic conditioning and a poor anaerobic capacity, and this is with respect to increasing or running at a higher sprint speed, and this can be achieved. This represents neuromuscular system. So this ability can be achieved by improving conditioning for focusing on neuromuscular system that can be trained by repeated sprint training as HIIT format. Now the ultimate step number 1, the SMART goal is improve the SMART goal is to improve peak power up to 450 watts, which is done by conditioning type 4 RST. Second is to maintain or slightly improve the aerobic conditioning by 5%, that is up to 14 km per hour. So this goal will improve the ability of this fast bowler to continuously perform at vigorous intensity for a longer bowling spell, at the same time maintain the intensity of the bowling performance, at the same time maintaining the bowling performance throughout the 10 overs or more than 5 overs that he may bowl in the tournament, in the upcoming tournament. Now this is step 1. Now for step 2, the periodized plan to be selected for this program is sequential plan. It is also called as block planning. Now this is specifically prescribed when you are reaching towards the competition phase or when you are in a competition phase. Now this is required so that you continue train at a higher intensity, at the same time you continue to manage the fatigue throughout the block, throughout the cycle, which will further help to increase the preparedness. Because as you reach closer toward the competition phase, having a high preparedness, a high fitness level, and at the same time managing the fatigue becomes the key objective of your periodized training, and this can be achieved when you apply a sequential plan. Sequential plan demands a conjugated sequential loading paradigm, which is nothing but you give emphasis to one fitness variable and you give less emphasis or you give a maintenance training for the other fitness variable. Again, the fitness variable that is selected here are interdependable and interconvertible. So here the interconvertible is first increasing the aerobic conditioning followed by increasing the aerobic capacity. This conversion of fitness variable will improve the ability to bowl for more than 5 overs and at the same time maintain the bowling performance throughout the match. Now let's sequence this fitness variable for all the 3 blocks. First mesocycle has 1 week of stimulation giving progressive overload and another week of retaining. So in week 1, the emphasis is to train aerobic capacity 2 times and aerobic conditioning 1 time. Since week 2 is a retaining week, it would be same as week 1. Now moving towards the second block, which is again the first week is the stimulation week and the second week is the retaining week. Now the emphasize again, the trick here is to make sure that the fitness variable are converted and the fitness variable are trained in a balanced order. So since the first block emphasize on aerobic capacity, the second block should emphasize on aerobic conditioning. So aerobic conditioning 2 times and aerobic capacity and anaerobic capacity for 1 time. So this gives a balanced training for anaerobic capacity as well as for aerobic conditioning. Now moving towards the third mesocycle, third block, week number 5. Again the emphasis is on training aerobic capacity, anaerobic capacity. 2 session. Here it will be 1 session because we are getting closer to the competition phase. So this would be a tapering week and a tapering block. So 1 session for anaerobic conditioning, conditioning 4, 1 session, and aerobic conditioning also 1 session. So since week 6 is a retaining week, it would be same as week number 5. Now this is where you have created a periodized training and a periodized plan. Now let's move to the last step of program designing, which is frequency, intensity, type, volume, progression. You start with progression. Now over here, aerobic conditioning, anaerobic conditioning is being trained for the first time. So the progression is with volume with frequency. What is the type of HIIT that is used to train anaerobic capacity? It is repeated sprint training. What is the intensity that is required? It is at a supramaximal level, around 120% of the mass value. So the current mass value is 13.5. So the 120% would be around 15 km per hour. Okay. Now the volume needs to be decided. So how do you calculate the volume? Now this is where you can use the cricket specific demands. A fast bowler have different types of run up length. Now this specifically athlete has a run up length of around 12 meters. So this information can be achieved in a consultation session or in a demographic info or in an exercise history of an exerciser. Now assuming that the run up length is around 12 meters, you would want to make the athlete run 12 meters at 15 km per hour speed, and this would be repeated for 10 seconds. Now, when it comes to RST, the recommended work interval is between 4 seconds to 10 seconds. Now, though the athlete is doing RST for the first time, a 10 second is chosen because the speed is much more less. 14 km per hour is a running speed, not even a high speed running or not even a sprinting speed. So considering that the intensity of the run is low, the duration of the run is suggested to be higher. So 12 meters distance would be covered with 15 km per hour and they will continue doing it for 10 seconds. Now, so this would be, the work interval is 10 seconds and the rest interval would be around 1 minute. The recommended rest interval for RST is around 1 minute to 3 minutes. But again, considering that the intensity of the run is lesser rest interval is suggested. So, one repetition is of 10 seconds and this would be executed at a speed of 15 km per hour. And this would be one repetition. So, a total of 3 repetitions of 10 seconds of work interval and so a total of 3 repetition of 10 seconds of work interval at 120% of mass, followed by 1 minute of rest interval. So this is the volume of the aerobic capacity of anaerobic capacity session. Now for aerobic conditioning, the progression would be with respect to intensity, because in the previous block the program ended with an intensity of 13.5 km per hour. Now here the program would start with an intensity of 100% of mass, which is 13.5 km per hour. So the progression is given with respect to increasing the intensity. The type of HIIT would be short HIIT. Now here the progression is also given with respect to the intensity plus the work interval duration. This is selected because conditioning ability increases when you spend more time at greater than vigorous intensity of your HRR. In order to fulfill this requirement, the initial work interval was up to 20 seconds. Now this is increased from 20 seconds to 30 seconds of work interval and 30 seconds of rest interval, and the distance that is chosen is 12 meters. So the 12-meter distance would be covered at 100% of mass, that is 13.5 km per hour speed, and this would be repeated for 30 seconds. This would be one set and this would be done for 3 times. So this is how a volume is created using the specificity demand of the athlete and the previous exercise history background and the current fitness level. Now in week 2, the progression is done with respect to, for anaerobic capacity, the progression is given with respect to volume with sets. So instead of 3 sets, 4 sets of 10-second of work interval and 1 minute of rest interval done at 120% of mass. At RST is the method and frequency is 1. And for aerobic conditioning, the progression is done with respect to increasing the volume by sets. So 3 sets was done earlier, now here 4 sets of 30 seconds work interval at 100% of mass, and the format of aerobic conditioning is short HIIT. This is done 2 times. And in the last block, here the progression is done with respect to intensity. So earlier it was 120% of mass, now it would be 130% of mass, and the volume would be same as mentioned in the week 3, that is 4 sets of 10 seconds of high run at 130% of mass and 1 minute of rest interval. And for aerobic conditioning, again the progression is given by intensity. The volume is same, 4 sets of 10 seconds of work interval and 30 seconds of rest interval done at 110% of mass. So this how you complete the program design, which is progressively overload, which is customized and which is balanced. So in summary, sport specific phase aim is to continue improve sport specific fitness variable while managing fatigue accumulation so that preparedness is optimal. This is achieved using a sequential periodized plan and a conjugated loading paradigm. Another important part of programming is to design tapering block. Distance of high speed run should be specific to the sports. Thank you.